Hi, Victoria here. I am just going to give my review of the article I read about comprehension strategies. So, this was called Multiple Strategies Approach and EFL Reading Comprehension of Learners with Dyslexia, Teachers' Perceptions. It was a study based out of Lebanon, and it involved 16 teachers. And they were looking specifically at students in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade with dyslexia. So there were several strategies that were addressed. So I'm going to go ahead and list them. So the first strategy was the use of graphic organizers, visual displays, mnemonic illustrations, a movie maker journaling and the use of movies, prediction, inference, text structure awareness, main idea identification, summarization, and questioning. So, given that I teach second grade inclusion, these are some strategies that I'm very familiar with, and there's some that I don't use that often. So, I was kind of looking at, I found it interesting how right off the bat in the article, the authors discuss in the literature review that these strategies are often not successful when used in isolation, which I do also, I agree with that just on experience alone. I know we talked about one of the strategies that I use in my classroom, how we combine the prediction, the questioning, the summarizing, um, and when we utilize them together, it gives the students a lot more understanding of the text that they're reading. So once I saw, how it was being looked at, not studying these skills, even these students in isolation. That's the other part that I found interesting. The setting of this study was an inclusion, which is what I do. So I just kind of, I found it interesting. I'm finding that some of these articles, I really am drawn to them because with doing all this research on reading, I'm starting to feel like I don't know, like I feel like I have a lot more weak areas in instruction than I realize. But and that's I do also feel validated by a lot of the things that I'm doing. So one of the ways I approached this was let me see how this relates to me and if there's any areas that I can improve in my instructional strategies. So the study took place over 10 weeks, and these strategies were implemented in the inclusion classroom, in the inclusion setting, um, 3 times a week. And it basically turned out to be about 6 hours of intervention implementation. And like I had said before, the strategies were never implemented in isolation or one at a time. So as these instructional strategies were being implemented, the tool that was used to collect the qualitative data were written logs by the teachers. So and a lot of teacher reflection, which I know is another thing that I'm not the best at, but I did appreciate that that's the tool that was used. And just thinking qualitatively, I do recall reading, whether it was one of the articles that I presented or someone else. I'll be honest, I feel like I get so much information that I'm not 100% sure of the source, but I think it was one of the ones I presented was the other researchers did their research using written logs because if they did interviews, they felt like it was too time consuming to transcribe everything and then code it. So again, I'm seeing an effective use of time using written logs. So this study didn't really present. I'm sorry, didn't really present a research question at all. It mostly presented just the question of what are teachers' perceptions on these strategies being implemented. So going through the study, not a whole lot was done based on the design and the procedure of it. It just pretty much presented these are the studies, this is the setting, these are the participants. But the findings was pretty lengthy. It did present a chart, and the authors broke down the findings by percentages. So interesting, and I don't really want to go. Let me see, I'm at 5. I'm the most effective. Well, what the teachers perceived to be the most the most effective strategy was the movie maker journaling and the movie use. So I'm going to just kind of discuss that because I know I've done some work with universal design for learning, and I'm really motivated every time I read about it. But it can be a little hard to implement because I don't feel like I'm implementing it correctly. And then I start to talk to people about it, and it becomes a discussion of choice. And I'm finding how uneducated, a lot of the conversations I've had with people, that their perception of choice is giving a child a choice between you can go on the computer or you can read a book, like choosing a center. And I'm trying to instill the understanding that that's not universal design for learning. So universal design for learning is taking an assignment and making it accessible to students of all abilities. And one of the most common analogies that they use in that training is when we started putting ramps on sidewalks for students or for people in wheelchairs. But then we started to find that these these wheelchair accessible sidewalks were also great for moms with strollers, kids maybe riding scooters. So it was something that was intended for one population, but really became helpful to so many others that we didn't consider. So when the discussion started about the movie maker journaling and the movie use in this article, I really started to think about with my students. One of the things they said was the oral response, and how this strategy is fast and it's helpful in the process of instruction. So students are able to be creative. They see a lot of creativity demonstrated, and they can actually apply it in their own stories. And one of the things that they said was really effective with using the movie maker with students was that they didn't have to do pencil and paper writing. And I do see a lot of my students who struggle, who are dyslexic, who have reading difficulties. They really struggle with writing. So, I appreciate walking away from this assignment with a strategy that I can go back and use. Even just sitting here doing this video, I feel like I am able to present my ideas faster, and I can make my points a little bit more clearly, as opposed to when I'm writing the research report that I just completed. I also kind of enjoy this a lot more, and when it comes to your videos, I feel like I get a lot more from listening to you, hearing, your voices change and watching your expressions when you're explaining something. I just feel like I get a lot from these videos. So this strategy made me think of that as well. Of course, there are always negative comments made. So some of the teachers felt like the software was not easy to use, and that the movies were too time consuming and distracting for the students if they weren't well oriented or monitored. So sometimes the activities were too long, and they had way too many things to pay attention to. But they felt like the students really needed to get used to the activities. And another teacher, and I don't mean to laugh, but another teacher did state that she felt like doing the videos created an issue with students remembering how to take notes. And then I'm kind of pulled back to, well, if this is an effective strategy for the student, then does he need to be able to take notes? I don't know. Second grade, I feel like if they can communicate it to me one way or another. But then again, I do have to consider that this study is based on a middle school environment. So moving forward, and like I said, I'm not going to go through all of these strategies, but I did find that one to be the most, I found myself reflecting the most on that section of this article. As far as limitations and future studies for this, the authors felt like the participant sample was small. So obviously they would like to see this study replicated with a larger number of participants and more grade levels. which I have to agree with those. I think those are the only two things that I would find that I would build on with this. All right, well, hope you guys enjoyed it. Can't wait to see your videos. Have a great day.